I'll make a loud noise so I can synchronize it. Hey there, Skips and Skipperettes from all across the vast electronic wasteland known only as Internet Land. And welcome back to Tales from the Jungle Crews. You may have noticed a small change to the podcast. There's video.
Whoa.
Apparently in the last 2 years, video technology has been invented. So it's very exciting.
That's exciting.
We may do more video things, we may not. But you may also notice I'm not sitting alone. Today I'm joined by Skipper Freddy Martin.
How do you do?
Who is well known amongst the internet circles. Themed adventure.
Themed Attraction.
Themed Attraction.
It's a podcast. And
yeah.
Backside of Water, I'm on Backside of Water,
Yep.
and as well as doing some stuff with Did You Know Disney, and the Tales from the Jungle Crews podcast.
You were definitely on our last season, and we had a good chat and sit down and had a great time talking. So here's what's going on. As many of you know, in September of 2017, I left the podcast arena because I was going back to the Disney employment, and I could not be producing content at the same time that I was doing things there. Partially out of, I could have, but I wanted to protect the people who I was working with. I didn't want to have a chance that someone I was interviewing would have a conflict of interest. So I decided it was time to step off from that. I didn't expect I'd be at the park for terribly long, but I wound up being there for 2 years. I did have to spend some time in the big green box. The Indiana Jones adventure, which is my nemesis. But yeah, so it came back, spent some time in the Jungle Cruise, and now that I've left the company, I wanted to spend some time with Freddy here and talk about the experience of going back, kind of where I'm thinking as far as where the podcast is going to go. We can talk about a lot of stuff. We have 2 years of news that we really haven't talked about. So I pulled out my jungle boats, pulled out my microphone, pulled out my friend over here, and we also have solicited for questions from our Facebook audience. A couple little neat notes about the podcast over the last couple of years. We have surpassed 3.5 million downloads.
Shut up.
No, you didn't know that?
Really?
Yeah.
I remember when you got 1 million.
Yep.
Wow,
Yeah, we're solidly at 3.5 million downloads.
Wow.
We have the Skipper store is launched, which is our T-shirts and pillows. We have 6 or 7 artists now that are designing for that. That's up on TeePublic.
It's great stuff.
Yeah,
really, really quality stuff. You picked some great artists who get the vibe and
the skipper Richard Wallace. Richard is fantastic. He did the art for our 2 card games that we did. We'll talk a little bit about Kickstarters in the future. But we just put a new one up. That's Skipper Ash, who did the creature from the Black Lagoon in the jungle hippo pool with the hippos, which is one of my favorite pieces of jungle art that I've seen in a while. Welcome, Kungaloosh.
Kungaloosh.
Freddy's also very involved in the Tiki community.
Well, I get to hang around with some of those folks, like the Tiki Tony and David Skipper, Dr. David Skipper, and all those cats. There's a bunch of great cats involved in the Tiki world, and I think I like to talk about that a little bit. Is that with this, we'll get to it in a minute, but the Jungle Cruise movie with El Rock is.
I haven't heard about that.
No, I'm sure you haven't, but it. Look, there was a time when nobody cared about pirates, and the Pirates of the Caribbean movie came out, and it did so well that there was this whole pirate resurgence. People remember the Jerry Seinfeld show, and he didn't. I don't want to be a pirate, right? Nobody wanted pirates, and then suddenly there were pirates, and it did so much for even that community. I have a good friend. Lauren Hoskins used to be
for the pirate community.
Yeah, for the pirate community. There's a whole big
doing well in Somalia. As a matter of fact, it's a very big.
Piracy is just it's come and gone.
Well, Napster has added so.
But I got a good friend who was in the pirate industry, and really made his way, and it did something. It was their time for people who were into pirates.
Yes.
That was their time, and now for people who are into jungle and tiki and all that stuff, the adventure stuff with the Society of Explorers and Adventurers coming up as this mega theme at the parks. This is our time. Yeah. This is a time where the marketing juggernaut that is Disney is going to raise up a lot of stuff, and then pretty soon we're gonna have a lot of stuffed toys, and then we're gonna feel like, boy, it's over.
Yeah, well,
eventually, when
I can get a Skipper Frank plush that I can sleep with, then my life is complete.
Okay,
with that.
okay, sure.
But well, I mean, I remember, when the Country Bears movie came out, then it was a big time for avoiding the Country Bears.
It really was.
That was a painful.
Yeah,
painful
sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. We
Yeah.
still don't have a Haunted Mansion movie where they
No, Guillermo needs to
really
get on
take that
over. Did you see? We're gonna way off topic at various points, but did you see the animated Haunted Mansion opening that came out? So there was a spec script, I guess, that had gone out there for Haunted Mansion, and they had done enough animation to do the opening for a kids animated show for the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah,
and they ended up not going anywhere, and the artist responsible leaked that video, which is now, I think, pulled down everywhere. But it was a young girl who lived in the mansion who would step into paintings that would take her into these worlds and into these different stories. It was beautiful. I mean, it's definitely something I wish they would explore somehow. They got to do something like that. But no, it's the Renaissance for men of a particular age. We have, DuckTales season 2.
It is.
I'm excited about the poster that came out from D23 with Darkwing Duck.
Darkwing Duck.
Penny, an adult Penny in the Darkwing Duck costume, fighting crime. Good stuff. Monterey Jack is making a return.
We're going back. They know who's going to pay the money, and they know who's going to take their kids there.
It is nostalgia gone wild.
Yeah.
So let's start this off. So I did go back to the Disney parks in September of 2017 due to an error, shall we say, in the paperwork side of things. They put me at the Indiana Jones adventure first and would not train me back at the jungle for 4 months.
Okay, you're jumping way ahead. So you're jumping way ahead.
I didn't mean to jump.
So for those who have listened to the show, Kyle interviews Jungle Crews skippers from way back. You had a 1955er.
Two 1955ers.
Two 55ers. You've had people from all eras throughout the history of Disneyland. Really interesting people who have had their summer in the jungle, and then they went off to do other things. Yep. Some of them, had only just recently left. Some had left 40 years ago, and it was a shining time in their life, but definitely different than it is now. So, to me, Kyle, I'm super interested in the transition that happened in your head and your heart. That after talking to all these skippers, sort of sparked the desire, the need, the impulse to say, wait. I keep talking about one day going back. Well, what made it happen?
Well, there were a couple things. So I started with the resorts. For those of you who, I've done an episode where I talked about my own story and kind of gave a little history. But in 2001, I was there for the California Adventure opening.
Yeah.
And then in 2003, I jumped over to the Disneyland side and went to the Jungle Cruise, was super excited. I wouldn't say I had been a Jungle Cruise aficionado. It was my favorite attraction, but I wasn't a die-hard jungle person at the time. And then I was there on and off until 2008. One of the major things that happens is when you work at Disney for that time, I found that I was increasing my girth faster than I was increasing my paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
When I left,
one was getting larger, one was getting smaller.
When I left, I had just broken 300 pounds.
Wow.
One of the big positives of going back was that I was able to drop almost 100 pounds in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So working at the jungle and getting all the exercise and avoiding the food from the in-between was a major plus for me. So I left in 2008 for family reasons, ended up not being able to come back. In the last 7 years ago, we just had our anniversary of dating. My wife and I have been together, and she is a professor at USC. I had an opportunity with where our finances were at, with where my photography business was at, to say, you know what, I'm shooting 3 days a month, 4 days a month, and I'm sitting at home not doing anything for a lot of the other time. And I said, you know what, I should just, I was talking to Frank Rios, who Frank is an amazing jungle lead and scheduler, and one of the people I've known for years and years. And I was just offhandedly commenting to him, and he says, "Well, you know, if you come back, I'll just I can give you as many opening shifts as you want."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Huh?" I said, "Yeah, no. If you want 5 days a week opening, you know, I'll make sure you're in there." And so that was April of 2017, and I made the phone calls, and there were they didn't have any hiring for that summer. They had filled it up. They didn't have any attractions jobs open. So we got around to August, and I went through the process, and it was a phone interview. They had stopped doing the in-person interviews at that time.
Yeah.
From what I hear, they're going back to that. They are starting to do panel interviews again, and they're doing less reliance on the phone interviews. I think that's partially a function that at times during the Disney experience, you have points where there's more jobs than people, and then there's times where you have more people than jobs.
Yeah.
And for a long time, they just had people galore. Now, with the minimum wage going up in Anaheim and a lot of other changes, I think that they're able to be a little bit more discriminate about who they're bringing in. You know, Disney's at $15 minimums now, and it goes up sometime next year. I don't remember the exact date it goes up. So, you know, they're ahead of the minimum wage curve. They're finally ahead of Target. They're finally ahead of In-N-Out.
Yeah. Wow.
Because when I hired back in, it was $11 an hour.
Really?
2 years ago.
2
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago it was $11 an hour, and you know, then we had a union negotiation, and went way up to 15.
Yeah.
So it was never about the money for me. I just had an opportunity to.
It was never about the money.
Well, I mean, look, I have passed a couple of years in my life where, you know, a minimum wage-ish level job was not my priority. I had other things going on that were taking care of the bills. You know, it's the joy of being a trophy husband. But no, I had the photography going on, and there was some chances. I was hoping to eventually get into the park photography side of things. So that was my goal, was to go back, do jungle for a while, and then start shooting for the resort again.
Yeah.
So I interviewed, and went really well, and then I got a call a couple weeks later to come in for traditions. That was actually, I think, the biggest change. People wanted to know. We have a list of questions from people on the Facebooks, and the question, one of the people said, what was the big difference on, what were some of the differences of coming back? One of them was that the traditions process was 4 days.
Yeah.
And it was the most noticeable change in how they treated their cast. It was a much bigger emphasis on show, a much bigger emphasis on people's roles, a bigger emphasis on the story. It wasn't just, let's throw you through 2 days of training and get you out to your attractions.
Yeah.
It was guest interaction training out in the lands. It was it was the safety and, you know, all the other things Disney's known for. But it went from 2 days of training, and I had done Disney University back in 2008 and 9. I was there for 2 years. And from someone who knows how they do it, and is part of that training process and knowing that, going in and saying, wow, this is just leaps and bounds of an improvement of what they were doing. Very impressive. I mean, that was a huge plus for that time.
Who was president at the time?
I still Chapek was. Chapek came in later. Yeah, I don't remember who it was. And I didn't really pay that much attention to that category. When I left, Cynthia Harris had been out, and it was Matt Weenet was the president back in 08, 09, something along those lines.
Yeah. So you come back, and first day you look down at your little sheet.
End of traditions, and there's a mistake because the orientation guy put my availability wrong. And the guy who's in charge of setting up all those schedules, who we had talked to repeatedly, and I had all the clearances from the managers to come back to Jungle, told me there's nothing he can do, and they just have to ride with it for 4 months. And I let out my hauler and thought about just saying, nope, I'll wait 6 months. But, look, Indy's not my cup of tea. I've never loved that attraction from working it. It's great to ride, but it's never been one I enjoy working. But I thought, you know what, let's get in the door. Maybe something will happen magically, and I'll be able to get over to Jungle. It's actually the second time it happened when I was there. So this is my 4th time with the company. The 3rd time, the exact same thing happened.
Really?
But that was a
These
year.
forgetful
It was
schedulers.
8 months between when I had Indy and when I had Jungle the second time, or the prior time.
Yeah.
So I learned it. I had a fantastic trainer and some really good people over at Indy. I just could give a shit less about it.
You're not real interested in.
I'm not the attraction I really care about.
Yeah.
It's loud. I don't like the evacuation. The attraction is in. It's 25 years old now.
Yeah.
And it definitely is showing its age. It had the first 4 months I was there. I would say I saw more downtimes than I saw in the 2.5, 3 years cumulatively that I knew the attraction.
Wow. Yeah. There's also on the thrill rides. There's this pace that is really shift goes by really quick.
It does.
Because it's just bam, 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 load, unload.
To some extent, the problem with Indy is you've got that walk where you have some people who are out of the attraction entrance.
Yeah.
You have some people that are down in the operation actually doing ride dispatch. So there's you have people sitting in the film room watching that movie over and over.
Yeah, right.
Rotating every 20, 30 minutes. So when you look at something like Space Mountain, where that dispatch is every 20
Oh my goodness, that's
every 28 seconds, where you have to have it, otherwise that ride can cascade and shut down. Or a Big Thunder Mountain, where it's the same thing. Indy, you actually have a little bit more flexibility because you can back the ride up if you have to.
Yeah, it can pause.
But a lot of the problems with Indy, it's a combination of vehicle issues, but also a lot of guests just didn't secure their stuff. Backpacks, water bottles, things like that fall off the attraction. But I mean, Indy needs a pretty big rehab. It needs a number of months of being down and letting them just totally rebuild the thing. It's 25 years. It's supposed to be the ride that would never have downtimes, and it needs some real TLC. Now, having said that, the new projection effects on the doors as you go into the temple are amazing.
Looks awesome.
The new Mara, all the projection effects are really, really good. It just is operationally, it needs a little bit of love.
Yeah. Okay, so you did your tour of duty there, and they finally put you on the Jungle.
So I was, if they were going by the official rules, there's a 4-month or so window that you're in probation where you're on your one attraction. At 4 months and 1 day, they had a call out of a training shift.
Yeah.
And I had someone just call me and say, "Hey, do you want this Jungle, training shift tomorrow? You'll be solo with a trainer." And I said, "You know what? Absolutely."
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think that they had seen that I brought something back with me as far as my experience and as far as my work ethic and maturity, and so the managers actually stepped up for me.
Yeah.
And they put me over there as quickly as possible.
Wow.
So that was a bit of a blessing. That was pretty amazing.
So let me paint a picture.
Yep.
It's 1989. Mid-June.
Okay.
It's June 1989.
Yep.
I walk out of the backstage area on the backside of on the east side of Main Street, and I walk across into Adventureland in my brand new costume. Well, it wasn't brand new. Somebody else's used costume from yesterday.
New
but
to
it
you.
felt new to me.
New to you.
And I walked around the corner with my little card, and I walked straight up to the Jungle, the box, the shipping office.
Yep.
And I said, "I'm here for training." 5 a.m., something like that.
Yep.
The smell of the water, the sound effects, all live, the gray sky, right? That's one thing that Anaheim always had a gray morning.
Yeah. It's the coastal marine layer.
Yeah, the coastal marine layer, and there's just this moment of fear and excitement that I'm about to step into my first Jungle Cruise. Did my Jungle Cruise training? How did that feel? Do you remember your moment coming back?
Well, and
time?
It obviously was my third time, and there was a 9 year or so gap in between. So one of the things so obviously I'd gotten to know the Jungle people who were working there over the 4 months, and it was before there was the big shift for Galaxy's Edge to really pull a lot of that talent out.
Yeah.
So I'd gotten to know people, so I knew who my trainer was going to be. And Skipper Joey, who I couldn't have gotten luckier in who my trainer was.
Yeah.
Joey is spiritually as close to a big brother for a guy who's younger than me that you can have. No, I mean, because big, tall dude, but similar senses of humor. You know, he would say his is better, but you know. But yeah, so getting to have him as a trainer, and you know, so he as a trainer basically says, I have the best shift in the world because I have one trainee who knew the attraction, who they could have signed me off on my first day, but he gets paid for 4.
Yeah.
So we took some nice long breaks and went to the Village House and had lunch there, you know, during the break times, and went and had a great time. So yeah, it was it was a very relaxed and very positive training atmosphere. It would have been different if I'd come straight back to Jungle, because there would have been fewer people that I knew. There were still some. There were a handful. Your Randy Grants of the world, and there were some people who were still there. Skipper Arvin, Jason, A-Lead Jason. So there are people who were there that I still knew. So that was exciting to have a little bit of that stepping back. It was interesting that on I think day 2 or day 3 of the training, we're up at the loading area, and this guy named Ben, who didn't know me, but he'd been around the attraction for a couple of years, leans over to me as I'm training and says, yeah, don't worry if it seems intimidating, you'll get the hang of it before too long. And I just looked at him and I just went, you are a freaking idiot. So, if you only knew what I went through to get back here for this.
Yeah, right. That's a bit similar. After my first summer, I came back. I think there was a 3-month break in there, and I came back to the dock, and there was this, you know, the boys club view back then. You know, everybody's gonna rib each other, and this. I mean, I'm 18 years old, so I feel like, but I'm back, right? And this other 17-year-old.
Because if you've worked the attraction for 6 months, you have ownership. Right?
Yeah, you have ownership.
You believe it. You know everything.
So this kid said to me, like, I was in the boat and I'm loading my pistol, and this kid yells down at me, "Move it up, rookie!" And then this other guy goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Don't you know who he is? He's been around. He's been around long before you."
But I love how that hits at 18.
Yeah.
The thing I always you'll get people who come in,
rookies at life,
or 18, 19, 20 years old, and they come in and within 3 months I want to be a trainer or a lead, and I'm like, slow the roll a little bit, simmer down, buddy. I actually think with Jungle or most of the attractions, you should have a 1-year window before you move into that stuff. You just don't see enough. If you look at if you count the number of parade shifts and Cosmic. You know, if you have a full year there, out of the 200 days a year that you're able to work that's not counting weekends, you know, you're probably only going to have 100 shifts in a year that first year, especially if you're part-time. Yeah. So, yeah, I think people put the cart before the horse on a pretty regular basis. But, yeah, and, you know, it was... the script wasn't much different. There were a couple jokes that I was, hardwired into telling that weren't there anymore.
Okay. Tell us about that. Tell my picture of it over the years. You know, it's so many years old that original script changes, and suddenly we've got new jokes, and then it stopped. It stopped being able to add anything. That's what I understood, and then suddenly it was this beautiful, 1994, everybody got to be involved in adding all their jokes.
So 75 or 76, you had a skipper named Joel Halberstadt. Okay. And he was the guy who kind of codified the script that we have today. So he was the one who did the big rewrite at that point. And so that script really survived until about 95 with the normal additions and fluctuations. But the thing is, from 75 to 95, it was not this tightly regulated, lawyers in charge of every single minute. Wow. Yeah. You still had, you were coming out of Disney Afternoon in the mid-90s. You get into the 94, 95 with the Indiana Jones rehab, and you've got narrations. Yeah. And the narrations department, there's an entire change in that culture. And then when narrations goes away, and they open Indy, they change the theming of Jungle, and that's the script that a lot of people still ignored, but that sat pretty firmly for a long time. Now, to give Dave Marley credit, one of the things that Dave was part of was one of the big revisions of the script. I want to say it was 04 or 5, but I could be wrong about that. But it was also that they started really taking the joke input of skippers.
Yeah.
And there was the suggestion box, which had always been in theory there, was actually something that was implemented. So one of the things I saw in the 2 years I was back was 2 full script revisions where some stuff came out and a lot of new stuff went in. You know, so you would have, I think we had 30 or 40 new jokes. I think it was 35 new jokes that went in the winter, January of 2018, I want to say. January, February 2018, there was a pretty major script revision, a lot of new stuff.
Recent.
Yeah, and then you know, it was there was a lot of great new jokes that went in. There were some changes.
So what did you notice was missing?
Well, you know, it wasn't as much. There were single specifics that were missing.
I think of that as, you know, you get to a point where the culture has shifted a little bit and things change. I know recently they pulled all the cannibal jokes.
Yeah, all the cannibal and headhunter stuff. We'll talk about that in a second. I think that it was, and you know, I honestly can't remember even specifics. A lot of them seem to be, well, I mean, the mother-in-law joke came back.
Did it really?
That had been
That's
out
so
of the,
strange.
that one had been out of this actual.
I never understood why that would
script.
go away.
I don't know. It's not. It's not
family.
Well, but also I don't. You know, I think that there hadn't been this culture of Henny Youngman mother-in-law.
Yeah. Hey.
You know, take
my wife, please.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
You know, that wasn't floating around. I actually have. Sorry, that was a power plug.
That was a little bit between two ferns of you. But
Yeah. Well, this is the Steel book from 2 years ago when I came back. So this has.
Oh wow, great.
Yeah, this actually has.
This does not exist.
No, this is the one that we get as cast members when we're training. But you know, as I was looking through this, I mean, there were different jokes that I told, but it sat really consistently. There wasn't a lot of major shifts in it.
What are the best steps you take when you come face to face with a tiger?
What are the best steps?
Long ones.
Now, one of the things for people who have not been skippers before, who may be fans, so we have how many pages is this bad boy? 62 pages. I would say that 10% of those jokes ever get used.
Yeah,
maybe 50. You know, so you get a lot of everyone tells the same ones because there's some jokes that are just much more consistent.
Yeah, I do one.
Oh yeah.
Come join us next week as we go in search of the great Peruvian handkerchief. Let's hope we don't blow it.
Yep, that's a great joke.
This is a good joke.
And that one gets used.
Does it?
Oh yeah.
Every time. Does it get wrinkled up and thrown on the floor to get hard and unusable?
You know, let's not. But that joke is a pretty consistent one that sits in the unload realm of things.
Yeah.
And then there's things like I get surprised about that still, you know, there's still enough people who butcher the rear of the boat joke.
No.
Skipper so-and-so is going to help you out in the middle there. The other skipper in the back is going to help you out by the rear of the boat.
Yeah. It's simple.
It's great if you stop it there, but people add things onto it and it changes it and makes it way too sexual.
Well, actually, you know, what's really funny is I noticed it's been 10 years since I've heard somebody, and now it's gone, but since I've heard anybody say the 2-for-1 joke correctly. So I'll hear people say, this is Trader Sam. He's offering us very special today. 2 of his heads for 1 of yours. They don't mention it's a 2-for-1 sale. Like, that's part of the joke. You have to have that context in order to understand 2 of his heads for 1 of yours. I'm sure you included.
Yeah, that was a joke. I didn't.
I don't think kids know young skippers know what a 2-for-1 sale is.
Because everyone's BOGO now. You know.
It's a BOGO sale.
You can't really throw a BOGO joke in. But yeah, I mean, so there were some jokes that shifted, but in general, it was so this is the 2017 revision. The 2018 was the one that I got a bunch of jokes into in the submission. I think I had 8 jokes that got into the script. There's still one joke that was approved but didn't make it in, which was my white whale, which was the rhino joke.
Okay.
Which was the local uprising with the rhinos chasing with the pole. And it's, hey guys, we've been looking for them all day. That's the world famous Jungle Crews band. They came out here looking for a new trumpet player, but it looks like they found